Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you. And like Kennedy said, and I think you guys know this, but Acorns is really here to help everybody save and invest for a better future. The reason we've launched a product line that we call Earn is because one of the key reasons people don't often save and invest enough is because they don't earn enough. And so we're trying to help with that on the spending side, so helping people find some earning opportunities when they shop, and now helping people find earning opportunities from new jobs, whether that's at home, side gigs, or even full-time work. And just to give some more clarity to why we did this, like we took a step back. We always try to think about the financial services and banking industry from a distance and look at it really from the ground up and ask ourselves questions about why things do and don't exist. And we found it to be odd that the banking industry doesn't help people with income, which is really just obviously a fundamentally critical part of your financial life and your life in general. So we just asked ourselves that question, like we do. We ask all kinds of questions like this, and we said, hey, a company like Acorns that's built around helping people save and invest for the future should really help people earn extra income. That should be a core part of our product and vision. And so we dove headfirst into it. And we also thought that this would be really appropriate to obviously launch right now when times are especially tough for all of us. And so here we are. And we're also, just proud to be here with you guys. I'm excited to be here and answer any questions you have. So I'm going to just dive in and begin. So the first question is, what advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs? I've done this a bunch of times. I would say almost always the advice I would give is to do the things that you feel most connected to, that make you come alive. There's a great quote about, not doing more of what the world needs, but doing what makes you come alive. And I think that's a real truth. I think when you find those opportunities to do what makes you come alive, you can be a much more successful entrepreneur and also obviously have a lot more joy. So that's one thing. And I think, this is always said, but it goes without saying that hard work and doing this and building things from the ground up is just a grind. Like no matter what, it's just a grind, and it's filled with highs and lows and lows and highs. There's a lot of lows, and you really have to just be committed to doing the work and putting in the time, and there's no way around that. So those are, for me, two really critical points. The second question is, what's the scariest thing about entrepreneurship? I would actually say the scariest thing about entrepreneurship is our own fear. And I think a lot of people are driven by fear. I mean, we all have fears, but a lot of people are driven by fear. And I think the scariest thing about entrepreneurship is when your fear gets the best of you, fear of failure, whatever it might be. But I think to power through that fear and to get past these difficult moments or thoughts that might hold us back, you just have to do. An old mentor of mine who was a really wonderful writer told me that writing is thinking. And I think that holds for everything. Designing is thinking, producing is thinking. The act of doing the work is where the work actually happens. So it's often better, and this is sort of counterintuitive, I think, but often better to stop thinking so much and just to start doing. Start producing, start writing that business plan, start picking up the phone and making those phone calls, whatever it is you need to just start doing it. And the magic happens in the doing. The paralysis happens in the analysis. So I think that's advice. Probably the scariest thing about entrepreneurship is our own fears. What's your leadership purpose? Is the third question. I would say, and I think this is a great activity for everybody. I was given this by a mentor of mine to do, and it felt a little kind of funny at first to do, but he said, what do you feel is your professional purpose? And write it down, like sit there and write it down. And when I did that, it was an extremely clarifying moment for me, because it just kind of came out of me, and I wrote level the playing field. And that was obviously inside me, like authentically. And so the process of sitting down and asking myself, what do I feel like, what is my professional purpose, or what should my professional purpose be? When I wrote down level the playing field, that became this clarifying lens and filter for me. Like, I can view everything I do through that. Is this thing I'm doing true to that purpose? And that provides a level of fulfillment, and I would say honesty and integrity in the work that maybe is hard to do if you don't sit down and write that purpose statement. You know, it's like a company. I think to build a great culture, you have to sit down and write what your core values are. But a lot of people don't do that as a person. And so I like to take the time to sit down and actually write down that purpose statement. And I always try to advise people that ask me this, you know, it's worth the time, and hopefully it just flows right out of you. What people or books have inspired you during your career? So many. I think that life is just a completely nonstop learning experience, and I'm always observing and watching and trying to grow and evolve. I feel like, in a sense, we're all unfinished work. And so the process of taking in information and being inspired and looking around and picking your head up from the sidewalk, I think is so important. If I had to list somebody, I would say Winston Churchill. He's just such an inspiring leader. I mean, you think about people in the last 100 years that, had they not been there, what would the world look like? It probably would have looked pretty different if he wasn't there. And I love his courage, grit. I love the fact that he was, you know, a leader and a soldier, but also a poet. I find actually, when you look back at a lot of the greats were also great writers. So he just had all these wonderful lines, and this is probably appropriate right now, but like, given what's happening with the pandemic, but you know, the line, when you're going through hell, keep going. By the way, that's good advice for entrepreneurialism too, because no matter what you do, you're going to go through some hell. And I think the advice to just keep going is probably the best advice you can give for those moments. How do you rebound from getting knocked down? Well, I get knocked down a lot. I've gotten knocked down a lot. I mean, you just get knocked down a lot. We all get knocked down a lot. I would say probably to try to keep perspective, that in the end, in a way, we're all not that big of a deal. To stay humble and to stay grounded in that reality. I think perspective is really important. Like, you just try to do your best. And when you look back on all the times you've gotten knocked down and you thought something was such a big deal, in the end, it most of the time doesn't end up being as big of a deal as you thought it was. So to have that perspective, I think, is really important. And back to the purpose point, I think for me, being rooted in the purpose, in this case, trying to help people save and invest for a better future, or raising financial literacy levels, or this, like, that stays really close to me when I feel like things are really tough, or if I feel overwhelmed. Like, you know, that keeps me inspired and helps me be courageous, frankly. I know also that I'm working in service of all of our customers, whether you are or not a customer, like so I feel that responsibility, and that sort of also forces me to keep plowing through whatever it is, whatever challenge it is that I'm facing or we're facing. Love it that you're wearing green. I put on mine too. I figured that was for Kennedy, but I think I'm also wearing a shade of green. What's the long-term goal for Acorns team members? Well, that's a great question. The long-term goal for Acorns team members, I guess I could answer that a number of different ways, but I would say that the long-term goal for Acorns team members is to never stop growing. That's one of our values. That's our fourth value. You know, I want everybody who's here to have an incredibly fulfilling experience at Acorns. And I want them to continuously grow and be challenged and move past all previous thresholds of possibility. Like to look back and say, wow, that was a really incredible time in my life professionally. I was doing good work. I grew a lot. I learned a lot. I was challenged. I faced circumstances that I thought were insurmountable, and I figured out how to get past them. And maybe I became a little bit more of finished work, if you will. How do I make myself more marketable in an effort to join the Acorns team? Well, you know, we have 5 values as a company: lead with heart, make bold decisions, always build trust, never stop growing, and find a way. Those are the qualities we look for in people. And so, and by the way, I think a lot of companies and hiring managers look for those qualities in people. Lead with heart. It's a mix of integrity, compassion, and tenacity. Make bold decisions is to leap fearlessly into the future. You know, take risks, have courage. You're gonna fall down, you know, figure out how to get back up. Always build trust is really say what you mean what you say, and do what you say you're gonna do. Never stop growing, as I said. That's all about curiosity, humility, a kind of constant growth and evolution mindset. And find a way is just, there's a way, you can find it, you gotta find it, no excuses. If you can't find it, that doesn't mean it's not there to be found. It just means you haven't found it yet. So keep going and keep trying, and be relentless in the pursuit of progress. With so much uncertainty in the world today, what advice would you give to a 25-year-old recent grad Acorn user and someone trying to save but find a career? Yeah, there is a lot of uncertainty in the world. You know, the politics, social unrest, pandemic, tough economy. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot for no matter how many things you've been through or how many times you've been through it, it's a lot. I would probably go back to the first thing I said, which is, and by the way, if you're a customer, you've heard us say this, but we like to say, and actually, if you go back in history, in the markets, every downturn has ended in an upturn. That's a truth, right? The past is not a guarantee of the future, but historically, every downturn has ended in an upturn. Things have a way of working themselves out. I'll bring it back to being a good investor, because it's about having a long-term outlook, being patient, sticking with it, being tenacious. There's a great Warren Buffett, you know, be fearful when others are greedy, be greedy when others are fearful. When the markets are down, that's a great time to get into the market. So sort of using this as metaphor. I would just say hard work and perseverance, patience, you know, courage, like take some risks, put yourself out there. The process of whether it's looking for a job or you know, trying to accomplish anything, there's a lot of no's. We all get a lot of no's. I mean, I've had thousands of no's. Someone once told me every no is one step closer to a yes. I think that's good advice. I think it's mathematically true. So I would stay rooted in that fact and keep your head high. You know, things have a way of working out generally, not always things, but generally. And in history, as the markets have shown, every downturn has a way of ending in an upturn. So I hope that answers your question. What advice would you give for a college student who doesn't know a lot about investments? What would be a good place to start? Well, I'm obviously a little biased, but we made Acorns for this purpose. We tried to make it really easy to get started. We tried to take a lot of the friction and heavy lifting out of it, because it is intimidating and overwhelming. And, even people who've been in this business for a long time, there's still a lot to know, and a lot, you have to learn all the time. The advice I would give, though, for investors is invest as early as you can. The key thing to know about investing, and if there's anything you remember from this as it relates to investing, is that compounding is the most powerful force, or one of the most powerful forces in the world. And compounding just means that when you invest your money grows on top of itself as it grows. So if your money grows 10%, if you invest $100 and it grows 10%, you now have $110, and 10% of 110 is more, and then 10% of the higher amount is more. So that's the beauty of investing, is over a long period of time, through the power of compounding, your money will grow on top of itself. By the way, there's periods where there's going to be dips and there are highs and lows, but history has shown that over time, markets have always gone up. So I would say start as early as possible, because every minute that goes by that you're not investing, you're not benefiting from the power of compound returns. Invest often, as often as you can, small amounts, $10 a week, whatever you can do. The more you contribute, the more frequently you contribute, the more you benefit from compounding, the more you benefit from phenomena like dollar cost averaging, which in essence means if you're contributing regularly, you can sort of even out the market. You can get in at different points, so you're not necessarily getting in at a moment where the markets are at their lowest or highest. So you're evening it out. So so invest early, invest often, and invest always. Like this is about patience, and this is about commitment and sticking to it. And there's just no other way to do it. Trading stocks, trying to make a fast buck. Like I say this, and the house always wins, almost always wins. Like the best way to think about saving and investing your money is to really think about, look, I'm gonna get involved as early as I can. I'm gonna stay committed. And again, like shameless plug, obviously Acorns does a lot of the work for you, but there are lots of products out there that help in this way. What can help me feel confident in changing careers in this time? Well, I think I've touched on this theme, but I would probably say a similar thing about the fact that it's important to have perspective, and change can be really good. I might say, I think we all are in a particularly charged period right now. So before you make a big life change, I think it's important to really think about, like, are you doing this in reaction to what's happening right now, or is this really what you want to do? Because changing careers, and it's a big decision, but if you've really thought it through, and it's the thing that you feel is really right for you after deliberating and sort of drowning out the noise of what's happening right now, I would say know that if you follow your heart, you'll usually end up in the right place. And that if you make a mistake, we all make mistakes, and you pick yourself back up and you go at it again. And I'm personally somebody who doesn't believe in the fact that we have to just be on one track. Like, I actually like people who have really multidisciplinary backgrounds. I think that leads to more richness of character, broader skills. My background is, sort of, if you look at it on a piece of paper, it's quite illogical. It's very, very windy, but all of those different experiences have helped give me a lot of perspective and insight about things that I can synthesize when I'm making decisions. Like, I think, the more you take in, the more you read, the more you learn, the more information you have to synthesize. So taking a job in a different industry, that may provide you a whole other kind of perspective that could bring you great ideas, that can make you more valuable in a new industry that you go in. Where do you think Acorns fits in the current rise of the fintech startups? It's a great question, and I appreciate you asking. I mean, our belief and central purpose is that saving and investing for the future should be the core of a financial services product, because in the end, that's, obviously there's a lot of people in debt, and paying down debt is really important, but the life journey in money is fundamentally connected to saving and investing for the future. And you want to do that, like I said, as often as possible. And so Acorns is all about helping people save and invest as much as possible. It's a very purpose-driven product. And the way we think about getting into other areas, like we started off talking about earning, is through the filter of how do we make sure you're saving and investing as much as possible. You'll see this more and more with our spend product, our banking product. Like that, we really created that product to help you save and invest more while you spend or before you spend. So that's, for us, is like, there's a real purpose to Acorns. We built a subscription pricing model because we looked at the financial services industry and thought there's a lot of surprise fees, a lot of hidden fees, a lot of, subscription pricing is very clear and transparent and predictable. So I think we differentiate in our central purpose. We make it really easy. We try to make it delightful, and we try to have a business model that's fair, that's clear. It's like, here's what you get, here's what you pay. So I hope that answers your question. Having too many ideas has led me to start none. Discourage comes in faster, as well as fear, not knowing where to start or if it's the best idea. What would you advise to come in with the plan on how and where to start, how to decide what ideas to choose when there are many? So that's a great question. And I have a lot of ideas too. Like I said early on, I think the process of pursuing something comes to life in the act of doing it. And so at a certain point, you just have to say to yourself, this is the thing that feels most true to me. This is an idea that I think has a big market potential. Hopefully, I think this idea is good for the world. And I should believe that I have a unique set of skills or gifts to execute on this idea. Those are filters I use. How big is the market? Am I the right person? Does it feel authentic to me? Is it good? Is it going to provide a service for people that they need, not just another service that looks like everything else? Those are some of my filters. But you have to at some point stop analyzing, make a decision, and go. I have, as a person, have a central philosophy that decision over indecision. In other words, I'd rather make fast decisions and be wrong sometimes than sit around and making no decisions and not doing anything. So that's the best way I would answer that question. What's your advice to job seekers who have diverse career backgrounds, but not necessarily in-depth experience in a particular career or industry they're interested in joining? So like, if you go back to the beginning of time, humans emerge out of, our sort of currency is storytelling, like we are storytellers. Everything that's been passed on has been passed on through story. By the way, even money, right? Barter, the beginning of money, it moves on in the world through storytelling. So what I find useful is to figure out if there's something you want, if there's something you're interested in doing, look back at your background, look back at your history, and think about how to tell that story, weaving together the things that you've done or the experiences you've had, the work you've done, weave that together in a way that tells the story of how it would make sense for you to go into this new industry or job. Human beings respond to stories. They don't respond to bullet lists of facts and data points. We respond to stories. And it's, getting back to the act of writing down your purpose. Like I said, I realized that my professional purpose was to level the playing field. And when that came out of me, I was able to look back in my life, and it did come out of me authentically. I was able to look back at my life and say, hey, why is that? Why should that be my purpose? Like, what connection do I have to this idea of leveling the playing field? And why did that come out of me? Like, why is that, and when I look back, like Kennedy said, I grew up in the East Village. I was a public school kid. This is where, for me, it began. I was a public school kid. I grew up going to school around kids that had very little. But somehow I got into tennis. My parents got me into tennis. And so I would play tennis at night with the wealthiest kids in New York. And I would go back and forth between these worlds, like kids who don't have a lot, kids who do have a lot, kids. And that was the beginning of like wow, this playing field is uneven. It's not level. And I started when I realized, like, I feel like that was my purpose. I look back through my life through that lens, and I was able to craft a story that made sense based on like my life's events. And I think you can do the same thing professionally. If you want to go into a new area, look at your past experiences, look at your skills, and figure out how to tell a story that's authentic, but that makes sense for this next chapter when you go to interview for the person with the person. Because again, human beings respond to stories. It's just how we're wired. What was the hardest thing you had to come to terms with in order for you to get to where you are now? That's a great question. Probably patience. I was just like a super impatient person. I mean, I'm still not great at it, but I was just not born with a lot of patience, or I was not raised. I don't know what. And impatience is bad. So I've really had to work extremely hard at becoming more patient with people. Impatience can be good. Urgency can be good. Wanting things to change fast now, like, there's a certain positivity associated with impatience, but that's been a part of my life's work. My mother used to tell me as a kid, more patience, more patience. So I'm still working on that. I think I have time for one more question. I just got the buzzer that I need to stop, but I just turned 67. I've gone through most of my savings this year. So I have to go back to work after the new year. My degrees are in advertising and in journalism, but my work history is in outside sales. Do not want to go back to calling on businesses in person. Want to transition into another field. What advice do you have for someone my age? It's probably the same advice I would have, I've given and would have. I mean, just go out there and put yourself out there. Every no is one step closer to a yes. I really keep that at the top of my mind, because, by the way, my name's Noah. So I was born with the word no in my name. But every no is one step closer to a yes. Like, just every rejection, every time you fall, just remember that. Every no is one step closer to a yes. I changed my name to Yesa at some point soon. So with that, I'm sorry I couldn't get some more questions, but I think it's time for me to hand it off.